The music academy was buzzing with excitement. Students moved about, carrying their instruments, tuning them, and practicing last-minute notes. The air smelled faintly of polished wood and paper, a mix of history and nervous energy. Today was special because a famous film director, known for discovering hidden talent, was visiting. His reputation for being strict, serious, and hard to impress had made the academy almost tense with anticipation. Everyone wanted to catch his attention, to be noticed, and maybe even be chosen for something big. But the director was unpredictable. Some students had tried before and left disappointed, while others had been thrown into the spotlight and changed forever. In the corner of the practice room sat a boy named Ethan. He was quiet, almost invisible in a room full of eager performers. He had messy hair that fell into his eyes and wore a worn sweater that had seen better days. He was not someone who sought attention. Ethan loved the piano, loved losing himself in the music, but the idea of performing in front of the director made his heart race like a drum. He kept his hands folded in his lap, watching other students perform. He noticed how some of them smiled confidently while others fidgeted nervously. He took a deep breath and tried to calm himself, reminding himself that he had practiced for years in his room when no one was listening. That was his secret world, a world where he felt safe and in control. The director entered the room with a presence that seemed to command everything. His tall frame and sharp eyes made people sit up straight instantly. He scanned the room quickly, as if assessing everyone at once. A few students stood taller, hoping to catch his gaze. The room went quiet, only the soft shuffle of feet or the occasional clearing of a throat breaking the silence. The director's lips curved into a small, playful smile. He was known for teasing students, testing their confidence, and seeing how they would react under pressure. He finally stopped in front of Ethan, who felt a wave of nervousness wash over him. The director looked at the boy and chuckled. "If he plays the piano, I'll kneel right here," he said, loud enough for the whole room to hear. The statement caused a ripple of laughter among the students and even a few teachers. They all assumed the boy would freeze or refuse to play. Ethan felt his face heat up. He had never performed in front of anyone like this. He considered quietly slipping back to the corner and pretending he hadn't heard. But deep down, something stirred inside him. It was a mixture of curiosity, courage, and a desire to prove himself, if only to himself. Ethan's friends nudged him subtly, whispering words of encouragement. "Go for it," one of them said, barely audible. Another nodded, smiling nervously. They all believed in him, even if he struggled to believe in himself. The whispers were gentle reminders that he was not alone. Taking another deep breath, Ethan rose from his chair. Each step toward the grand piano felt heavy, but also exciting. The polished black surface reflected the overhead lights, and the keys looked like a sea of white and black waiting for his fingers. He paused for a moment, letting the atmosphere sink in. The entire room was watching him now, the chatter gone, replaced by an expectant silence. As he sat down on the bench, Ethan's hands hovered over the keys. His fingers trembled slightly. Doubts crept into his mind. What if he messed up? What if he forgot the notes? What if he wasn't good enough? But he quickly pushed those thoughts aside. He remembered the nights spent practicing when no one was watching, when his fingers glided over the keys effortlessly, when he could feel the music flowing through him. Those memories gave him courage. He pressed the first key gently, a soft, clear note that seemed to echo through the room. It was simple, but it marked the beginning of something extraordinary. The director raised an eyebrow, leaning slightly forward in his chair. He had expected hesitation, maybe a timid start, but not this. The note was pure, honest, and confident. Ethan continued, his fingers moving with growing confidence across the keys. The melody began to take shape, a mix of light and shadow, joy and longing. Each note seemed to carry a piece of his soul. The students and teachers watched in amazement. The room, which had been filled with nervous energy and playful laughter moments ago, now held a respectful silence. Everyone felt the music, as if Ethan had opened a window to a world they had never seen before. As he played, Ethan lost himself completely. He forgot the director, the audience, and even the pressure. There was only the piano and the music, each note telling a story, each chord expressing something he could not put into words. He remembered the encouragement of his mother, the quiet hours of practice, the small victories, and the moments of doubt. All of it poured into the music, creating a performance that was both technical and deeply emotional. His breathing became steady, his movements natural. The nervousness melted away, replaced by a sense of purpose and freedom. The director leaned back, his expression shifting from playful amusement to genuine astonishment. He had seen many talented students, but this was different. Ethan was not just skilled. He was real, vulnerable, and powerful through his music. The director's smirk faded, replaced by a look of admiration. The boy in front of him had done something remarkable, something that could not be taught or faked. The students around Ethan began to feel the impact as well. Some exchanged glances, eyes wide with disbelief. Others whispered quietly to themselves, acknowledging the talent unfolding before them. It was as if the music had cast a spell over the room, transforming it into a place of wonder and possibility. Ethan reached the middle of his piece, introducing more complex rhythms and harmonies. The music swelled, filling every corner of the room. Some students covered their mouths in surprise, unable to contain their awe. Teachers shifted in their seats, impressed and moved by the depth of expression. The director's fingers tapped lightly against his knees, a subtle sign of being drawn into the performance. He couldn't take his eyes off the boy, watching each movement, each expression. Ethan's eyes were closed now, lost in the music, unaware of the world around him. The performance was no longer just about showing skill. It was about telling a story, sharing a part of himself with everyone present. As the final notes lingered in the air, a profound silence followed. The room was so quiet that the soft rustle of a notebook page seemed loud. Ethan opened his eyes slowly, finally aware of the audience and the director's gaze. For a brief moment he felt uncertain again, wondering if he had done enough. Then the director stood, a slow smile spreading across his face. He walked toward Ethan, and true to his earlier playful promise, he knelt down in front of him. The gesture was not mockery but respect, admiration, and awe. Ethan blinked, stunned, unable to speak at first. His heart pounded, a mixture of relief, pride, and amazement. Applause erupted from the students and teachers, some clapping enthusiastically, others cheering, unable to contain their excitement. Ethan finally smiled, a shy, genuine smile, as he realized the power of his own courage and talent. He had stepped forward when he had every reason to hesitate, and he had been rewarded not with words, but with recognition, respect, and a life-changing moment. The director reached out, placing a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "You have something very special," he said. "Never stop playing." Ethan nodded, feeling a warmth and confidence he had never known before. He had learned that sometimes, stepping into the unknown, trusting in oneself, and taking a risk could open doors to unimaginable opportunities. The music had spoken for him when words could not. And in that moment, surrounded by awe, respect, and applause, Ethan knew that this was only the beginning of a remarkable journey. After the first few notes of his performance, Ethan felt a small spark of confidence. The warmth from the piano keys seemed to flow into him, carrying away some of the tension that had been sitting in his chest like a heavy stone. The director, kneeling in front of him, watched intently, his eyes wide and unblinking, as if trying to memorize every movement, every expression. The room remained silent, filled with anticipation and the soft hum of the piano's resonance. Ethan's fingers moved carefully at first, but as the music developed, they became more confident. The melody swelled and dipped, sometimes tender, sometimes strong. Each note told a story that the boy had never been able to put into words. Memories of quiet nights in his small room, practicing alone while the world slept, guided his hands. He remembered the feel of the keys under his fingers, the soft echo of each note in the empty room. Those private hours had built this moment, and now, as he played in front of an audience, He realized how much those moments had shaped him. As he played, Ethan noticed the subtle changes in the room. The students, who had been chatting and fidgeting before, were now sitting perfectly still, eyes fixed on him. Some of them had their mouths slightly open in surprise, unable to hide their awe. The teachers leaned forward, murmuring quietly to each other, impressed by the skill and emotion pouring out from the boy. Even the director, who was known for being tough and hard to impress, seemed taken aback. He had expected a simple performance, maybe a few mistakes, but this was something entirely different. Ethan's heart pounded, but not with fear anymore. It was a rhythm that matched the music, a steady pulse that kept him moving forward. He allowed himself to be fully absorbed by the piano, letting each note flow naturally. The melody shifted, moving from soft and delicate to bold and expressive. It was as if he was speaking directly through the instrument, telling stories of joy, struggle, hope, and longing. The sound filled every corner of the room, touching everyone who listened, creating a shared experience that needed no words. Midway through his performance, Ethan began a more complex section, one that required precision and control. His fingers flew over the keys, moving with both power and grace. There was a risk in this part, a chance to make mistakes, but Ethan embraced it. He had practiced this section countless times in private, and now he could do it without fear. Each chord, each scale, each intricate rhythm came together perfectly, blending technical mastery with deep emotion. The director's hand moved slightly, tapping lightly on his knee, a subtle sign of fascination and approval. As the music progressed, Ethan closed his eyes, letting the world fade away. The noises of the room, the expectations of the audience, even the presence of the famous director, all disappeared. There was only the music, only the piano, only the story he was telling through sound. He remembered why he had started playing in the first place. The joy of creating something beautiful, the escape it offered, and the quiet sense of accomplishment it brought. That joy now poured into every note, creating a performance that was both personal and universally moving. The audience felt the depth of his emotions. Some students wiped tears from their eyes, moved by the raw sincerity of his music. Teachers exchanged impressed glances, whispering praises under their breath. Even the director seemed caught off guard, his stern face softening as he listened. The playful smirk he had worn earlier was gone, replaced by genuine admiration and awe. He had underestimated the boy, and now he knew that Ethan's talent was something extraordinary, something rare. Ethan transitioned into the final section of his performance, a part that combined everything he had played before. The notes built on each other, creating a crescendo that filled the room with energy and emotion. His hands moved with confidence and precision, guided by both practice and instinct. The music spoke of triumph and vulnerability, of courage and honesty. Each note seemed to hang in the air for a moment, echoing in the hearts of everyone listening. There was a sense of inevitability, a feeling that this moment was meant to happen, that all the effort, the late nights, the doubts, and the hopes had led to this single perfect performance. As the last note lingered, Ethan allowed himself a deep breath, feeling a wave of relief and accomplishment wash over him. He opened his eyes slowly, taking in the faces around him. The students were staring, some wide-eyed, some clapping softly. Teachers were nodding, murmuring their approval. The director, still kneeling, slowly rose to his feet. His eyes shone with a mix of surprise and respect, and he took a small step toward Ethan, acknowledging the power of what he had just witnessed. The moment felt timeless, a pause in reality where only the music and the boy existed. Ethan felt a smile spread across his face, shy but genuine. He realized that he had done something remarkable, something that mattered not only to him but to everyone who had listened. The music had spoken for him, telling a story he could not have conveyed with words. He had faced his fear, taken a risk, and found a voice that was uniquely his own. The applause began, quiet at first, then building as more and more people joined in. Students clapped enthusiastically, some standing, some cheering softly. Teachers offered nods of approval and whispered compliments. Even the director joined in, his expression one of admiration rather than amusement. The energy in the room was electric. Ethan's performance had created a shared experience, a moment of connection that transcended language and expectations. He realized that talent alone was not enough. Courage, heart, and authenticity were equally important. By daring to step forward, by trusting in himself, he had created a memory that would stay with everyone in that room forever. The director approached Ethan, placing a hand on his shoulder, a gesture of recognition and respect. "You have something very special," he said quietly, sincerely. "Never stop playing." Ethan nodded, feeling a warmth and pride that he had never known. This moment marked the beginning of a journey, one that would challenge him, inspire him, and reward him in ways he had never imagined. The shy boy who had quietly loved music in the privacy of his room had stepped into the spotlight, not for fame, not for attention, but for the pure love of playing. And in doing so, he had captured the hearts of everyone who had witnessed his gift. As he left the piano, the room erupted once more in applause, the sounds echoing like the finale of a symphony, a celebration of courage, talent, and the power of following one's heart. After the applause had settled, the room seemed to hold its breath once more. Ethan stepped back from the piano, feeling the warmth of the wood beneath his fingers lingering in his mind. He tried to slow his racing heart, taking a deep breath to calm himself. But it was more than excitement. It was a strange mix of relief, pride, and disbelief. The boy who had always doubted his own courage now realized that something had shifted. He had shown not just skill, but a piece of his heart, and the reaction around him was proof that it mattered. The director, who had initially made a playful joke, now looked completely transformed. His eyes, sharp and assessing moments ago, were soft with admiration. He studied Ethan as though trying to understand how someone so quiet could produce something so powerful. The kneeling, the playful jest, the smirk, all of it had vanished, replaced by a sincere acknowledgement of talent. He spoke, his voice low but clear. "That was beyond anything I expected. Truly remarkable." The words carried weight, not empty praise, but genuine respect that reached Ethan in a way applause could not. Ethan's friends moved closer, their eyes wide and shining. They had known he was talented, but witnessing this transformation was something entirely new. They whispered quietly, sharing glances filled with astonishment and admiration. Teachers nodded, some whispering words of encouragement and congratulations. Even the students who had doubted him before now looked at him differently. In that instant, Ethan understood that courage could change perception. The shy, quiet boy in the corner had stepped forward and left a mark on everyone in the room. The director motioned for Ethan to sit back at the piano. "I want to hear more," he said, the earlier jest replaced by anticipation. Ethan hesitated for a moment. The first performance had been extraordinary, and the pressure now felt heavier. But the warmth of encouragement from friends, teachers, and even the director gave him the courage to continue. He sat down again, fingers lightly brushing the keys, feeling the familiar rhythm return. The piano seemed to respond to his touch, each key vibrating with potential, ready to tell the next part of his story. He began slowly, letting the music flow naturally. This time the melody was different, deeper, more introspective. Ethan explored the spaces between notes, the silences that spoke as loudly as the chords themselves. Each sound carried emotion, revealing not just technical skill but a depth of feeling that resonated with everyone in the room. The director leaned in, clearly captivated, as Ethan's fingers moved with precision and grace. The students watched, mesmerized, unable to look away. Even the most skeptical among them felt something stirring within their chests, a recognition of talent that could not be denied. As the performance continued, Ethan allowed himself to experiment, adding subtle flourishes, exploring different rhythms and dynamics. His mind was fully present, listening to the sound as it filled the room, guiding him forward. He remembered every quiet practice session, every moment spent learning to control his fingers, to listen, to express. Those hours, which had once seemed mundane, now bore fruit in a performance that was alive and vibrant. Every movement felt natural, every note intentional, every pause meaningful. The music began to build, layering complexity over simplicity, emotion over technique. Ethan felt a thrill of freedom, the joy of creation mingling with the pride of overcoming fear. The room itself seemed to respond, the air heavy with anticipation and wonder. The director's expression shifted subtly, a mixture of surprise and approval. He had seen countless performances, but this one was different. Ethan was not just playing notes. He was telling a story, inviting everyone into a world only he could create. The energy in the room was electric, an unspoken connection between the performer and the audience. As the piece reached its climax, Ethan's fingers moved faster, more confidently, yet every note remained clear and deliberate. The crescendo swelled, filling the room with sound that was both powerful and delicate. Some students leaned forward in their seats, completely absorbed. Others sat back, eyes closed, letting the music wash over them. Teachers exchanged impressed glances, whispering quietly about the boys' talent and potential. The director, usually composed and reserved, now appeared completely engrossed, his earlier smirk nowhere to be seen. He was witnessing something rare, something that transcended skill, something truly remarkable. Then came a delicate passage, soft and tender, where Ethan's fingers danced lightly across the keys. The music seemed to float, carrying emotion that was palpable. The silence that followed each phrase amplified its beauty, creating a sense of intimacy and vulnerability. Ethan's eyes closed again, fully immersed in the music, feeling every note resonate not just in the room but within himself. He realized that performing was not about proving something to others. It was about expressing something inside, something that words could not capture. This understanding gave him even more confidence, even more freedom to let the music speak. As the final notes approached, Ethan slowed, allowing each chord to linger. The music softened, fading gently into silence. The room remained still for a moment, as if everyone was suspended in awe. Then, slowly, applause began, quiet at first, then swelling into a wave of sound. Students cheered softly, teachers clapped with approval, and even the director joined in, his face lit with admiration. The moment was not about theatrics or praise. It was a shared recognition of something beautiful and true. Ethan smiled, a shy but genuine smile, feeling a warmth spread through him that he had never experienced before. The director approached, placing a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Your music speaks in a way that is rare," he said. "It tells a story. It touches hearts. Keep playing always." Ethan nodded, feeling a mix of pride and humility. He realized that talent alone was not enough. Courage, authenticity, and the willingness to share oneself mattered just as much. The shy boy who had quietly loved music in his room had stepped forward and shared a piece of his soul. That moment, that performance, would remain with him and everyone who had listened forever. Ethan left the piano for a short break, his mind still buzzing with the experience. He felt a sense of accomplishment, but also an eagerness to continue. The director's presence, the audience's reaction, and the connection he felt through music had awakened something inside him. He knew that this was only the beginning, that there were many more challenges, more opportunities, and more moments where he could shine. The room seemed different now, charged with energy and possibility. Students who had doubted him before now looked at him with respect and admiration, inspired by his courage and skill. As Ethan rested, he thought about the journey that had brought him here. The long hours of practice, the moments of doubt, the quiet determination to keep going, had all led to this point. He realized that true growth came from pushing oneself beyond comfort, from taking risks, and from trusting in one's abilities. The applause, the recognition, and the director's praise were affirmations of something deeper, the validation that effort, passion, and honesty could create something extraordinary. He felt ready to face whatever came next, knowing that he had found not just his talent, but his voice. The director signaled for him to continue, and Ethan returned to the piano, feeling a new sense of purpose. The room was silent once more, waiting to be carried away by his music. As his fingers touched the keys, he felt a calm focus settle over him. This was his element, his way of communicating, and he intended to give everything he had. The notes began to flow, gentle at first, then building into a rhythm that was confident and expressive. Every movement was deliberate, every sound filled with meaning, every pause intentional. The audience listened, captivated, and Ethan knew that he was not just playing. He was connecting, sharing, and inspiring. Time seemed to blur as he played, each moment stretching into the next. The director leaned in, visibly moved, and the students remained entranced. Teachers exchanged impressed glances, silently acknowledging the depth of Ethan's talent. Even those who had doubted him now felt the power of his performance, recognizing that something special was unfolding before them. The music was more than notes. It was emotion, story, and passion woven into a tapestry that everyone in the room could feel. Ethan understood that this was the true power of music, the ability to transcend barriers, to touch hearts, and to create moments that would be remembered forever. As he concluded the performance, Ethan allowed the final notes to linger, each one echoing softly before fading into silence. The room stayed still, savoring the moment, before erupting into applause once again. Students clapped enthusiastically, teachers nodded in admiration, and the director's face reflected awe and respect. Ethan smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. He had faced his fear, trusted himself, and shared his gift with the world. In doing so, he had discovered not just his talent, but the courage to embrace it fully and the joy of connecting with others through music. That day would remain with him forever, a defining moment in his life and the start of a journey filled with endless possibilities. The room was quiet again, the applause fading but leaving a lingering energy that seemed to hum in the air. Ethan sat at the piano, taking a moment to steady himself. His hands hovered over the keys, feeling the familiar texture, the smoothness of the black and white notes beneath his fingers. There was a sense of anticipation, not just from him, but from the entire room. Everyone was waiting for what would come next, drawn in by the honesty and emotion of his previous performance. Ethan closed his eyes briefly, letting himself breathe, letting the music guide him. He began to play again, this time starting softly, almost like a whisper. The notes floated in the air, delicate and tender, painting images of quiet mornings, gentle rain, and memories that lingered long after they were gone. His fingers moved with precision, yet there was a fluidity that made every chord feel natural, as though the piano itself was responding to his touch. The director watched intently, leaning slightly forward, his earlier playful demeanor completely gone. He was witnessing something rare and extraordinary, and he could not look away. The melody slowly grew, introducing deeper tones and subtle harmonies. Ethan's confidence had grown since the first notes, but now there was something more, an emotional depth that drew everyone in. Students leaned closer in their seats, captivated by the story unfolding through sound. Teachers exchanged impressed glances, recognizing not just technical skill, but the ability to convey emotion and tell a story without words. The director's eyes were fixed on Ethan, clearly moved by the authenticity of his performance. Every note seemed deliberate, every pause intentional, and every chord carried meaning. As the music progressed, Ethan allowed himself to explore more complex passages. His fingers danced across the keys, moving with grace and precision. There was a rhythm to his movements, a flow that made it impossible to look away. The piece was challenging, requiring both speed and control, but Ethan had practiced these moments countless times. Now, performing in front of an audience, he felt a mix of exhilaration and calm. Each note resonated with emotion, each phrase told a story, and each pause invited the listener to feel, to imagine, to connect. The director's expression shifted subtly as Ethan played. He had expected talent, but this was different. It was more than skill. It was artistry, emotion, and honesty all combined. He could feel the music in his chest, the vibrations of the piano echoing through the room. Ethan's ability to convey vulnerability and strength simultaneously was rare, and it left an impression on everyone watching. The students were silent, captivated, their previous chatter replaced by awe. Some leaned forward, eyes wide, while others closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them. Ethan's hands moved faster now, building intensity while maintaining clarity. The piece was reaching its crescendo, a powerful combination of speed, strength, and emotion. The room seemed to pulse with the music, each note resonating in the hearts of the listeners. He felt a surge of energy, a connection to the audience, and a sense of purpose. The director could no longer hide his admiration, his face reflecting a mixture of surprise, respect, and awe. He had underestimated the boy, and now he realized that Ethan's performance was something extraordinary, something that could not be taught or replicated. As the music soared, Ethan began to vary the dynamics, softening certain passages to create contrast, emphasizing others to evoke emotion. He was fully immersed, lost in the world he was creating with sound. The audience could feel the story he was telling, the journey of the notes carrying them along. Teachers whispered quietly to each other, praising the boy's ability to control both technique and emotion. Students exchanged glances, silently acknowledging the power of what they were witnessing. The director's body leaned forward slightly, drawn in completely by the unfolding performance. In a moment of quiet reflection within the piece, Ethan's fingers lingered on certain keys, allowing the notes to echo and resonate. The silence between the notes became as powerful as the music itself. It created a sense of intimacy, a feeling that the audience was sharing a private moment with him. He remembered all the nights of practice, the times he had doubted himself, and the moments of perseverance. That personal history was embedded in the music, and it gave the performance authenticity and depth. The director's eyes softened, recognizing the courage and vulnerability it took for a young boy to share himself so completely. The piece shifted once more, moving into a section that combined complexity with emotion. Ethan's fingers moved quickly, yet every note was precise. He felt a rhythm in his chest that matched the music, a heartbeat guiding his performance. The crescendo built, carrying tension and release, excitement and reflection. The room felt alive, the energy almost tangible. Every student and teacher was caught in the moment, unable to look away. The director's admiration was evident in his posture, his intense gaze fixed on Ethan, watching him create something that felt timeless. As the final moments approached, Ethan slowed, letting the music settle, each note lingering just long enough to resonate fully. He added subtle flourishes, small gestures that enhanced the emotional impact without overwhelming the melody. The silence that followed the last note was profound. The room remained still, everyone caught in the aftermath of what they had just experienced. Ethan opened his eyes slowly, realizing the impact of his performance. The students' faces reflected amazement, the teachers' nods expressed respect, and the director's expression showed genuine admiration. Then, slowly, applause began. It started quietly, tentative, then grew into a wave of sound that filled the room. Students clapped enthusiastically, some standing, some cheering softly. Teachers smiled, some whispering compliments and praise. The director finally rose from his seat, his face alight with respect and astonishment. He approached Ethan, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Your music speaks in a way that is rare," he said sincerely. "It tells a story. It touches hearts. Keep playing always." Ethan felt a warmth spread through him, a mixture of pride, humility, and joy. He had faced his fear, shared his talent, and discovered something profound about himself. Ethan stepped back from the piano, taking a moment to let the energy of the room settle. He realized that performing was not about impressing others. It was about expressing himself, sharing something true, and connecting with people through music. The experience had given him confidence, a sense of purpose, and an understanding of the power of courage. By stepping forward, he had transformed not only the audience's perception of him, but also his own perception of himself. The shy boy who had once been hesitant to play in front of anyone now felt capable of anything. The director spoke to the audience, praising Ethan's skill and the emotional depth of his performance. The students and teachers continued to clap, their admiration evident. Ethan's friends gathered around him, congratulating him, smiling with pride and awe. The moment was one of recognition, celebration, and inspiration. Everyone in the room had witnessed something extraordinary, a performance that would linger in their minds long after the applause ended. Ethan felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing he had given his best, faced his fears, and shared his gift. The music had not just entertained. It had moved, inspired, and connected everyone present. As he left the piano for a short rest, Ethan reflected on the journey that had brought him here. The countless hours of practice, the moments of doubt, and the quiet determination had all led to this moment of triumph. He understood now that courage and authenticity were just as important as talent. The recognition he received was not only a reward for his skill but also for his willingness to take a risk, to trust himself, and to share a piece of his heart with others. He felt ready for whatever lay ahead, knowing that he had discovered not just his talent, but the power of his own voice through music. The director encouraged him to continue, signaling that the performance was far from over. Ethan returned to the piano, a renewed sense of purpose guiding his hands. The room quieted again, waiting to be carried away by the next part of the performance. Each note he played was deliberate, expressive, and filled with meaning. He explored new melodies, subtle variations, and emotional nuances. The audience remained captivated, fully immersed in the journey he was taking them on. Every chord, every pause, every flourish conveyed emotion, telling a story that transcended words. The energy, connection, and impact of his music were undeniable, leaving everyone in awe of the young boy who dared to step forward and play from his heart. Ethan's fingers flew across the piano keys with confidence and precision, each note resonating with emotion that seemed to fill every corner of the room. The melody had grown richer, deeper, and more complex, capturing the attention of everyone present. The students and teachers were captivated, leaning forward, their eyes fixed on the boy who was transforming a simple piano into a vessel of raw emotion and storytelling. The director, whose playful attitude had been replaced by admiration, watched intently, unable to take his eyes off the performance. There was a magnetic quality in Ethan's playing, a connection that went beyond mere skill. He was telling a story that everyone could feel, and the room was immersed in it. As Ethan moved into the next section, he introduced more challenging rhythms and chords. His fingers moved faster, yet every note was precise and deliberate. The complexity of the piece reflected both his technical mastery and his deep emotional understanding of music. Each crescendo and decrescendo was carefully placed, creating tension and release, excitement and reflection. The audience could feel the story unfolding through the sound. Even those who had initially doubted him were now fully engaged, their previous skepticism replaced with awe. Teachers whispered to each other, acknowledging the combination of talent and emotional intelligence on display. Students exchanged glances, inspired by the boy who had once seemed so shy and unassuming. Ethan felt a surge of confidence as he reached the climax of the piece. His hands moved almost as if on their own, guided by the music that flowed through him. He had practiced these sections countless times, but performing them in front of an audience, especially one that included the famous director, added an entirely new dimension. Each note carried a part of his heart, every chord a reflection of his journey and struggles. The music was no longer just sound. It was emotion, story, and expression intertwined. The director leaned forward slightly, captivated by the intensity and authenticity of Ethan's performance. The boy was not just playing the piano. He was communicating something deeply human, something that resonated with everyone listening. In the middle of the crescendo, Ethan paused briefly, letting the sound linger in the room. The silence between the notes was as powerful as the music itself. It allowed the audience to absorb the emotion, to feel the weight and depth of the story he was telling. Teachers and students alike felt the impact, a shared experience that was both intimate and profound. The director's eyes reflected a mixture of surprise, respect, and admiration. He realized that he had underestimated Ethan, assuming that the boy's quiet demeanor meant he lacked confidence or skill. Now, it was clear that Ethan's true power lay not just in talent, but in his courage, authenticity, and emotional depth. As the final section approached, Ethan's fingers moved with renewed energy and focus. The music swelled, reaching a peak that was both powerful and graceful. Every chord, every scale, every pause was carefully crafted to create a sense of culmination. The audience was completely absorbed, feeling the tension and release as if it were part of their own heartbeat. The director's posture shifted subtly, a sign of complete engagement and admiration. He had witnessed many performances, but this one was exceptional. Ethan's ability to combine technical skill, emotional depth, and storytelling had created a moment that would remain in everyone's memory. The room seemed to vibrate with the energy of the performance. Students whispered quietly, trying not to break the spell of the music, while teachers nodded in silent approval. The director's expression softened, a smile of genuine admiration spreading across his face. He could feel the passion and dedication that Ethan had poured into his performance. This was not just talent. It was the product of years of practice, determination, and the courage to step forward when it mattered most. Ethan's hands continued to move with precision and emotion, each note reinforcing the story he was telling through the piano. As the final chord approached, Ethan slowed, letting the sound resonate fully before fading into silence. The room was still for a moment, caught in the impact of what had just happened. Then, gradually, applause began to build. It started quietly, tentative, and then grew into a wave of sound that filled the room. Students clapped enthusiastically, some standing, some cheering softly. Teachers smiled, some whispering compliments and praise. The director finally rose, his expression one of awe and respect. He approached Ethan, his footsteps deliberate, each one carrying a sense of purpose and admiration. He stopped in front of the boy, who looked up, wide-eyed and breathless from the intensity of the performance. True to his earlier playful promise, the director knelt in front of Ethan. But this was not a jest or a joke. It was an act of genuine respect and admiration. "Your music is extraordinary," he said sincerely. "I have never seen a performance with such depth, skill, and emotion. You have something very rare." Ethan felt a wave of warmth and disbelief. He had never expected this, never imagined that his music could move someone so deeply, especially someone as respected and influential as the director. The applause continued around them, but Ethan's focus was on the moment, on the recognition of his effort, talent, and courage. His friends gathered around, their faces filled with pride and astonishment. Teachers approached, offering congratulations and praise, acknowledging the skill and emotional intelligence he had demonstrated. The students who had doubted him now looked at him with admiration, inspired by his courage and ability to express himself so fully. Ethan realized that this was more than just a performance. It was a turning point, a moment that would shape how he saw himself and how others saw him. The music had become a bridge, connecting him to the audience and allowing him to communicate in a way that words could not. The director spoke to the audience, praising Ethan's talent and the emotional power of his performance. He encouraged the students to recognize the importance of courage, authenticity, and dedication. Ethan listened, feeling a mix of pride, humility, and inspiration. He understood that talent alone was not enough. It was the combination of skill, heart, and the willingness to take a risk that created something truly remarkable. He had stepped forward, faced his fear, and shared a piece of himself with the world. The reaction of the audience and the director confirmed that he had succeeded in a way he had never imagined. As the applause subsided, Ethan allowed himself a moment to breathe and reflect. He felt a sense of fulfillment and joy, knowing that he had given his best and connected with others through music. The performance had been more than a display of talent. It had been an expression of his inner self, a story told through sound and emotion. He realized that this was only the beginning, that there were many more opportunities, challenges, and moments of growth ahead. But for now, he allowed himself to savor the feeling of accomplishment and recognition. The director placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder, a gesture of encouragement and respect. "Keep playing always," he said. "You have a gift that can inspire, move, and change lives. Ethan nodded, feeling a deep sense of purpose and responsibility. He understood that his music was more than a personal passion. It was a way to connect with others, to share emotion, and to make a difference. The shy boy who had once hesitated to play in front of anyone had found his voice, and with it, a newfound confidence that would carry him forward. As the students and teachers began to leave, still buzzing from the performance, Ethan stayed for a moment at the piano. He let his fingers hover over the keys, feeling the familiar texture, the vibration of potential. The room was quiet now, the energy of the performance lingering in the air. He smiled softly, knowing that he had experienced something extraordinary, something that would stay with him forever. The music had not just been a performance. It had been a revelation, a moment of connection, and the beginning of a journey that would continue to shape his life in ways he had yet to imagine. The room was buzzing with energy even after the final note faded. Ethan slowly stood from the piano, his hands still tingling from the hours of performance. The applause had not fully died down, and murmurs of admiration filled the air. Students whispered to one another, some still staring in awe, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. Teachers shook their heads in amazement, commenting softly on the depth, skill, and emotion that Ethan had displayed. The director, who had started the day with a playful smirk, now stood silently, eyes wide with astonishment and respect. Ethan felt a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. His heart was pounding, and yet a calm pride washed over him. He had faced a challenge he never thought he could overcome. Standing in front of a room full of people, performing with all his heart, he had not only proved his talent, but had shared something deeply personal. The director finally spoke, his voice filled with sincerity rather than jest. Ethan, that was more than music. It was a story, a journey, a gift. You have inspired everyone in this room. Ethan felt a warm glow of pride and humility. He had never imagined that something he loved so privately could touch so many people. Students surrounded him, offering congratulations, high fives, and words of admiration. Friends who had known about his talent were now seeing him in a new light. They could feel the energy of his music, and their smiles reflected the joy of witnessing something truly extraordinary. Teachers nodded and whispered to each other, acknowledging not just the skill, but the courage it had taken to perform with such vulnerability and authenticity. Ethan looked around, taking in the faces of people who had seen him rise beyond his fears. The experience left him feeling both overwhelmed and uplifted. The director took a few steps closer, lowering his voice so that only Ethan could hear. You have something very rare, he said. Not just talent, but heart, courage, and the ability to make people feel. Keep playing. Keep sharing this gift, and don't ever doubt yourself. Ethan nodded, speechless for a moment. He realized that this wasn't about recognition or praise, but about understanding the true impact of his music and the power of sharing it with others. The director's words carried weight, and Ethan felt a deep sense of responsibility and purpose ignite within him. He returned to the piano for a few quiet moments, letting his fingers linger over the keys, recalling the music he had just played. The room had grown calmer, the excited energy replaced by a reflective stillness. Ethan allowed himself to play softly, experimenting with melodies and harmonies that felt personal and free. The students and teachers, though no longer formally applauding, gathered around quietly, drawn to the music that seemed to float effortlessly through the room. The director watched silently, a faint smile on his face, as Ethan explored the piano with curiosity and joy. This moment was different, more intimate, more genuine, and entirely about connection rather than performance. As Ethan played, he thought about the journey that had led him here. The countless hours of practice, the early mornings, the late nights, the self-doubt. All of it had prepared him for this moment. He understood now that music was more than notes on a page or technical skill. It was about emotion, storytelling, and honesty. By performing from the heart, he had created something that could move, inspire, and connect with others in ways words never could. Each note he played carried a part of his journey, and the subtle reactions of the audience confirmed that the message was received. When he finally stopped, the silence lingered just long enough to feel significant. Then, once again, applause erupted, this time not just from admiration but from deep appreciation and respect. Ethan looked around, meeting the eyes of students, teachers, and the director, and he felt a sense of belonging and acceptance he had never experienced before. The applause was not for vanity or recognition. It was a shared acknowledgement of courage, talent, and the power of following one's passion. For Ethan, this was more meaningful than anything he had imagined. The director stepped forward, offering a final gesture of respect. He shook Ethan's hand, and in that moment, Ethan felt a profound sense of validation. This had never been about proving himself to anyone else, but about taking a chance, sharing his gift, and staying true to himself. The director's recognition reinforced what he had always known deep down, that music was his way of expressing, connecting, and inspiring. The moment felt timeless, a pause where only the boy and the piano existed, surrounded by the hearts and minds of those who had witnessed his gift. As the crowd began to disperse, Ethan lingered near the piano. The room was quieter now, filled with the soft murmur of conversations and reflections on what they had just experienced. Students approached him individually, expressing admiration, sharing how the music had touched them personally. Teachers offered encouragement and advice, recognizing not only his skill but his potential for growth. Ethan listened, grateful and humbled by their words, feeling a sense of responsibility to continue developing his talent and sharing it with others. The director remained nearby, observing quietly, a satisfied expression on his face as he witnessed the impact of Ethan's performance. Later, as the school emptied and the room was finally silent, Ethan sat alone at the piano for a few more moments. He let his fingers move over the keys, experimenting freely, exploring new melodies that reflected his emotions and imagination. There was no audience, no expectations, only him and the music he loved. It was a private celebration, a time to reflect and internalize the experience. The boy who had once been shy and hesitant had discovered a newfound confidence and courage that could not be taken away. He realized that talent was important, but heart, perseverance, and the willingness to share oneself were equally, if not more, important. As he finally stood to leave, Ethan looked around the empty room one last time. The piano, the keys, and the space where he had poured his heart out would forever hold the memory of this day. He knew that this was not the end, but the beginning of a journey filled with possibilities. Every note he played had created a connection, every chord had told a story, and every pause had invited the listener into his world. He felt ready to face new challenges, to perform again, and to continue growing both as a musician and as a person. The director approached him once more, offering parting words. "Remember this feeling, Ethan," he said. "The courage, the focus, the joy, it's all yours. Carry it with you and you'll go far." Ethan nodded, feeling a sense of purpose and determination solidify within him. He realized that this moment, this experience, was a turning point that would influence the rest of his life. He had discovered not just his musical talent, but the power of sharing it authentically, the importance of courage, and the joy of connecting with others through art. Walking away from the piano, Ethan felt lighter, freer, and more confident than ever. The applause, the admiration, and the recognition were important, but the true reward was internal, the understanding that he could face his fears, trust himself, and create something meaningful. The shy boy who had hesitated to play in front of anyone had grown into someone capable of moving hearts and inspiring others. As he left the room, he carried with him not just the memory of a remarkable performance, but the knowledge that courage, passion, and authenticity could change everything. This day would forever be a defining moment, a reminder of the power of music, heart, and perseverance.